Yeah, pull left side. We're on 29.1, reptiles. You've probably heard of them before.
Nope, vaguely.
That's a reptile.
That's a turtle, it's not a reptile.
Reptiles are fully adapted to life on land. Different from amphibians. Amphibians live some of their life on land, some of their life in the water. Tadpoles in the water when they're babies, and then they turn to something like a frog or a salamander or a newt, and come onto land as an adult. But they would have to go back to water to reproduce. Different for reptiles. Fully adapted to life on land. Reptiles evolved from amphibians. An amphibian became more adapted to the land, thicker skin, and evolved the ability to reproduce away from water, which we'll talk about in a minute. Characteristics that allow reptiles to succeed on land include a shelled egg, scaly skin, more efficient circulatory and respiratory systems. All of that helps you deal with life on land. Now here is the shelled egg. Frogs lay an egg in the water that doesn't have a shell around it. So if you're going to have your egg survive on land without drying out, it has to have a shell around it. And so that's what we have. Reptiles have a leathery shell, and birds and some mammals have a hard shell. But it's leathery, but it does... even though it's leathery, it keeps the water in. It keeps water from getting out. And that's what's important. So the organism evolves. There's the developing embryo. Oh, look, it's a little baby lizard or something.
It's like a chameleon.
Now, if you're stuck in an egg, you need several things. You need water around your body so that all your cells stay moist. All living cells need moisture. And so there is this membrane called the amnion that surrounds the embryo, and it's full of water. That exists today even in humans. When you're developing in your mother's tummy, you have an amniotic membrane around you. And you may have heard of your mom's water breaking before she has a baby. That's this membrane breaking and the water rushing out. So the amniotic membrane, and then there's the yolk sac. The embryo needs a food source. Tadpoles can just swim around and eat, but this embryo can't swim around, and so there's its food source, the yolk sac. Now what does the embryo do with its waste? Its pee waste, its nitrogen wastes. It puts them into a different sac called the allantois. The allantois holds nitrogen waste.
What did we do?
We put the pee into our mom's bloodstream because there's a connection between, and then she pees out for us. Good question.
Is that why pregnant ladies always have to go to the bathroom?
One reason, yeah. Also, the baby squeezes their bladder smaller.
This big.
And then the chorion is a special membrane that surrounds everything that pulls in oxygen. Even though water cannot get through the leathery shell, listen. Even though water cannot get through this leathery shell, oxygen can. And the chorion is a membrane that pulls in oxygen and gets it to the embryo and excretes carbon dioxide. So the chorion is a gas exchange membrane. Yes?
Wait. Are fish protozoans or deuterozoans?
Fish are deutero. All chordates are deutero.
Alright, thank you.
So check this out. Multiple choices, 4 choices. Amnion, chorion, allantois, yolk sac. Multiple choices. Which one is responsible for keeping water around the embryo? Amnion, A. Which one is responsible for feeding the embryo? Yolk sac. Which one is responsible for holding waste? Allantois. Which one is responsible for gas exchange? Chorion. Which one is responsible for keeping water in? Okay, so y'all are pretty good.
Which one is the embryo?
Embryo. Video
An
footage.
amniotic egg provides nourishment to the embryo and functions as the embryo's total life support system. The reptile egg is encased in a tough, leathery shell. The amnion is a membrane filled with fluid that surrounds the developing embryo, cushioning it and preventing dehydration. The main food supply for the embryo is the yolk, which is enclosed in a sac that is attached to the embryo. The clear part of the egg is the albumin, a source of additional food and water for the developing embryo.
We didn't talk about that.
The embryo's nitrogenous wastes are excreted into the allantois, a membranous sac that is associated with the embryo's gut. The chorion is a membrane that forms around the yolk, allantois, amnion, and embryo, and allows gas exchange for respiration. A reptile hatches by breaking its shell with the horny tooth, called an egg tooth, on its snout, which falls off shortly after hatching.
Cool. Allantois is how he pronounced it. I've always said allantois. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, you can't.
Now, frogs are always close to water. One reason, they have really thin skin. And the thin skin, they help take in oxygen through their skin. But if you're going to live away from water, you can't have thin skin. Or all of your water, Drew, seeps out through your skin.
Unless you have external scales.
So you need, if you're living away from water, you need tough, dry, scaly skin that doesn't let water through. And that's what reptiles have. Scales that look like the scales of a fish.
What is that? What animal?
I don't know.
What did we see in
We
the...
saw one like last week.
That one in an iguana, dude.
Some reptiles, like snakes, shed their skin in order to grow bigger. It's kind of like an insect does. Because the skin is so tough and hard that it doesn't expand. And so they shed it.
It's called...
Sounds shedding
So, if you can't take in oxygen through your skin like a frog does, you got to have better developed lungs than a frog has. And so that's what we see develop in reptiles, even better lungs than a frog has. Bigger lungs that can take in more oxygen. Reptiles' lungs have a large surface area. With more oxygen, more energy can be released through metabolism and made available for complex movements. Remember, the purpose of oxygen, the purpose of getting oxygen to your cells is so they can make ATP. So the organism can breathe. Leah, you aren't allowed to do that during class, sorry. You have to pay attention. Now here, when we look at a reptile's heart, it's also got a 3-chambered heart, but you can see a division growing between the bottom chamber here. And in some organisms, this division grows all the way up, so it's got a 4-chambered heart. Alligators and crocodiles have 4-chambered hearts. All the other reptiles have 3-chambered hearts. We think that some dinosaurs had 4-chambered hearts too. So we see the development going from 3 to 4-chambered hearts like us. And that's because these organisms are more active. If you're running around on land, you've got to pick yourself up from gravity. You can't rely on the water for buoyancy. And so if you're more active, you need more chambers. Yeah?
So what does more chambers do for your body?
It makes it where the blood flow is separate, where you get a pump that goes to your lungs. 2 of the chambers are responsible for going to the lungs and back. 2 of the chambers are responsible for going to the rest of the body and back. You kind of have a division of labor there. And when we do the circulatory system later, we're going to go into that in detail, how that works. So you got to wait a little bit.
So
yeah.
Only alligators and crocodiles have 4-chambered hearts.
Those are the only reptiles that have 4-chambered hearts.
How long have they been around? Alligators and
Oh, since the age of the dinosaur, hundreds of millions of years. 200 or 300 million years.
That's pretty.
There was actually a whole group, a lot of people don't know this, there was a whole group of dinosaur-like creatures related to alligators and crocodiles, and there was another group of dinosaur-like creatures related to the T-Rex and Velociraptor and all those. And at one point, a couple 100 million years ago, there were just as many as both of them. Then for some reason, the scientists are still trying to figure out the crocodile type dinosaurs kind of died out, and the bird-like dinosaurs kind of took over. And scientists are still trying to figure out why that was. But there were two big groups of dinosaurs, not one. Kind of interesting. Most reptiles are carnivores. That means they eat meat. Some are herbivores, eat leaves. Most
Herbivores
are
eat
herbivores eat leaves. To make it easier to swallow prey whole, snakes have loosely jointed jaws that can spread apart to take in their food. You've probably seen video footage maybe of large snakes eating, a whole deer or something like that. Their jaw unhinges and they can open it real
Did you
wide.
ever see the boa the alligator?
Yeah.
I did not.
I'll give you the video. I have a documentary of it.
I would like to see that.
I'll bring it to you tomorrow.
Yes, I've seen the snake.
Snake.
Bro.
Vision is the main sense in reptiles. Listen. Some reptiles have tympanic membranes and others detect vibrations through their jawbones. A tympanic membrane, just like a frog has, allows them to hear. It's just a little membrane on the side of their head that can vibrate. In snakes, Jacobson's organs in the mouth are used to sense odors. Have you ever seen a snake flicking its tongue? What they do is they get their tongue kind of moist, they stick it out, they flick it around. Any molecules that are in the air get stuck on the tongue. Then they pull the tongue in and they touch it to the roof of their mouth. And on the roof of their mouth there's a sensing organ called Jacobson's organ, named after the guy who discovered it, that can tell what those molecules are. It's like how it smells. So it doesn't just take in air through its nose, it takes in molecules on its tongue and touches them to the roof of its
Does it have taste buds on its tongue also?
I don't know. Probably.
Oh, probably.
Snakes sometimes have pits that sense the heat of their prey. There are certain type of snakes that have little heat-sensitive pits, and even in pitch black, if a mouse or something is going by, they can see its heat and lock onto its heat and strike. Yeah, cobras do that. Rattlesnakes do it.
Wait, how can it see its heat? What does that look like?
Have you ever seen the movies where the soldiers or something have, maybe Predator was one, have heat sensing
Is that how it
goggles?
actually like sees it?
Yes.
Those colors?
Yes. Well,
They see it.
we don't know. He can't get inside his brain to see actually, but it can't see the heat, so it has to see it somehow.
Drop that.
So this is a rattlesnake, and the heat pits are right here under the nostrils.
I hate snakes.
Yeah, it's a beautiful creature.
Snakes ate me.
Good.
Reptiles are ectotherms. That means they're cold-blooded. That means whatever the temperature is, that's outside, that's what the temperature they are.
Are frogs?
33 degrees outside, their body's 33 degrees. What happens if it gets to 32? Wouldn't they freeze solid in a block of ice?
Yes.
Yes, they would. That's why they have little holes that they can go into where it's warmer underground. So to warm up, they'll go bask in the sun until their body temperature gets high enough where they can do stuff. So they're totally dependent on the outside temperature. That's ectothermic. Different from us. Doesn't matter what the outside temperature is, our body's 98.6.
Are frogs endotherms?
Frogs are ectotherms.
I'm in freeze.
Some reptiles move with limbs sprawled to their sides and push against the ground. Crocodiles have limbs rotated further under the body that can bear more weight. We see in evolution, we see the arms and legs kind of out to the side. And here's how reptiles do it. Most reptiles, they push their body up and they kind of do like this. And you can imagine that would take a lot of energy. Have you ever tried to lift yourself up, stretch out between two bars, and pull yourself up? I mean, that takes a lot of energy.
I did gymnastics.
What's easier is to have your legs under you and push up like that. It's a lot easier to hold yourself straight up like this than to hold yourself in a split. So if the further your legs are under you, the easier it is to carry your weight. So we see through the evolution of these organisms, the arms and legs kind of start moving further and further under the body. And then when we get to birds and mammals, they're right underneath, like ours. Reptiles have internal fertilization. You can't spawn like fishes if you're living on the land. You can't just put your sperm and eggs out there. They'll dry up. They'll land on the ground and dry up, and they won't be able to swim to one another. So you have to have internal fertilization. The male puts his penis inside the female and squirts the sperm, and then the sperm can swim around inside the female's body to the egg. Sexual reproduction. Internal fertilization. After fertilization, the egg develops to form the new embryo and an amniotic egg. Most reptile eggs are buried and the sun incubates them. So the female lays the eggs, buries them, and then they're relatively well protected usually. If they're buried, things can't find them very easily, but some things have such a good sense of smell that they do find reptile eggs. But anyway, and then the little baby hatches out of the egg and digs its way out. After laying their eggs, most females leave them alone to hatch. Most reptiles don't care for their young very much. Not all, though. Alligators and crocodiles do care for them. There are 4 orders of reptiles you have to know. It's class Reptilia. These are the orders. Squamata, lizards and snakes. Testudinata, turtles and tortoises. That's easy to remember. T, turtles and tortoises. Crocodilia, that's easy. Crocodiles and alligators. Sphinodonta. No, I'm sorry, Sphinodonta. Donta referring to its teeth. That's the tuatara. Sphinodonta. 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 I'll show you a picture.
Describe it to me.
Right there.
Okay, first, the lizards and snakes. Y'all know what lizards and snakes are. Lizards have legs with clawed toes, so lizards have claws. Lizards usually have movable eyelids, a lower jaw with a movable hinge joint, and tympanic membranes.
Snakes are legless.
Snakes are legless and have shorter tails than lizards. Snakes lack movable eyelids and tympanic membranes.
Can they hear?
Some use vibrations. Their jaw vibrates. They put their jaw to the ground, and the ground picks up the vibrations and transfers through the jaw. Like lizards, snakes have loosely jointed jaws. Some snakes have venomous fangs. Here are the turtles. Turtles have an interesting way to survive. They're real slow moving, look like it'd be a good meal. They pull themselves inside their shell, and you can't really get to them. The dorsal part of the shell is the carapace. This part is called the carapace. The ventral part of the shell is called the plastron. That's underneath. Carapace on the top, plastron underneath. I'm sure you've held a turtle shell, kicked it around a little bit. They're pretty tough. Many turtles can pull their head and legs inside their shells for protection.
Like soccer sports. Oh.
Some turtles have taken back to the water, like the sea turtles. We have these around here. Got a big picture of them in back. You ever seen that?
What's going on with that? What are they doing? Okay. That's not a penguin. Is that like a baby and mom?
I think so. That's a good question. I don't know. Are they mating?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I don't see any shy on top.
Crocodilians have 4-chambered heart, which delivers oxygen more efficiently. Crocodiles have a long snout, sharp teeth, and powerful jaws. You can always tell a crocodile that's the longer snout. Alligators have a broad snout.
These are more dangerous.
Crocodiles are more dangerous. Crocodiles tend to attack, and they're
Which ones are faster?
Crocodiles.
I don't know.
Crocodiles.
I'm scared of those.
Crocodiles.
Look at the body of the alligator. That's an alligator. How many here been to the Okefenokee Swamp? You need to go there if you haven't been. It's real close.
I've been chasing.
It's a big swamp in Waycross, about an hour from here. It's actually south of Waycross, but anyway, you go about an hour from here, and just alligators everywhere. They're protected, and I mean they're everywhere. It's pretty cool. They got some huge ones.
I
Yeah.
have a friend that lives kind of like near there.
Yeah.
On a lake, and he's had like 12 dogs killed by alligators.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty good.
There was a time not too long ago when I was a kid, alligators were about to go extinct because they were hunted. And they introduced them as an endangered species. They were one of the first to be protected by the Endangered Species Act. And now their numbers are huge, so that loss kind of saved them. Question? Question?
For my question, like, where we live, we have a golf cart by where we live.
Yeah.
And every single day, when it's really sunny by the golf cart, there's an alligator just laying by.
Basking in the sun to try and get their temperature
It's
up.
huge. It's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they can grow 15 feet long. That's about from here to the door, if you're wondering.
and the golfers don't even mind.
Okay, tuataras. You were asking what a tuatara was, Graham?
Kind of looks like an iguana.
Tuataras look like large lizards and are found on the islands off the coast of New Zealand. Tuataras have a third eye located on the top of their heads that detects sunlight, even when their other eyes are closed.
It's on top of your head.
Tuataras have 2 rows of teeth on the upper jaw. And there's a picture of one. Looks like a lizard. But it's got enough differences between it and lizards, and we know through looking through the fossil record that it's kind of on a different line. So this is kind of an evolutionary holdout that managed to survive all these years. So here is the evolutionary tree that shows the origin of these things. The amniotic egg led to a line that eventually formed all the mammals. A different line formed the turtles, tuataras, snakes, lizards, crocodiles, and then the dinosaurs and birds are closely related there. And of course the dinosaurs have gone extinct, but the birds are still around. And see, the crocodiles are in the group amongst them.
How did the birds not
The birds were smaller and warm-blooded. And when the big meteor hit, put a bunch of dust in the atmosphere that blocked the sunlight, the only creatures that survived were the small ones. And the warm-blooded ones, because it got real cold for a number of years.
Huge birds before that.
There weren't people here. Can you do that?
There were huge dinosaur-like birds, yeah. Yeah. Pterodactyl, have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, but how big are those?
It's wide as a, almost as wide as a swoon.
A pterodactyl?
Wow.
Did you get that on camera?
No. Couldn't.
Move on. One more time.
That's my pterodactyl impression.
Yeah, put that in the new video.
I wish I could.
Okay, so video, read about Reptiles 29.1. Could be a quiz tomorrow.
I am not. I hate camera.
You don't have to record the video on the camera.
Let there be a quiz.
You guys at home?
Dude,